If you've ever had a binge and immediately spiraled into shame, self-blame, and promises to do better tomorrow, today's episode is for you. We're diving deep into the calm process, a practical framework that helps you respond to out-of-control moments with food in a way that actually creates change instead of keeping you stuck. You're about to learn how to turn your most difficult moments with food into your greatest opportunities for growth. Welcome to Binge Eating Breakthrough, the podcast to help you stop feeling out of control around food and build trust with your body. If you've tried everything but still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've been there too. I'm Jane Pilger, and I'm here to help you see binge eating in a new way so you can finally break free. Each week, you'll get the tools and insights to create peace with food and your body. Your breakthrough starts now. Hello, trusted listener. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you're ready to learn a completely different way of responding to the moments when you don't show up with food the way you'd prefer. I trust that you're willing to challenge the voice in your head that says shame and self-blame will somehow motivate you to change. And I trust that you're open to discovering that your most difficult moments with food can actually become your greatest teachers. Today, we're going to dive into something incredibly practical: what to do after a binge, or any time you eat in a way that doesn't match up to your vision for yourself. We're going to explore the calm process, which is a framework that I've developed that helps you move from shame and judgment into curiosity and compassion, so you can actually learn from these experiences instead of just beating yourself up over them. Now, before we get into the framework itself, I want to address something that many of you experience. After a binge or an out-of-control moment with food, there is often this immediate rush of shame, judgment, and self-blame. Your brain starts telling you things like, I'm so disgusting. I have no willpower. I'll never figure this out. What is wrong with me? Or I'm broken. And then from that place of shame and self-blame, many of you try to figure out how to fix the problem. You might start searching online for how to stop binge eating. You might listen to podcasts about binge eating while driving around eating more food. And yes, I have been there more times than I care to admit. You might even be driving around right now after a binge or eating while listening to this. There is no judgment from me. I get it. I understand. You might start making promises about how you'll be perfect tomorrow, or you might just give up entirely and think, I'll never figure this out. This will always be my cross to bear. But here's what I want you to understand. None of those responses will help you create lasting change. When you're in shame and judgment, you're operating from the survival brain. This is the part of your brain that is designed to keep you alive, not to help you learn and grow. When your survival brain is activated, you literally don't have access to the parts of your brain that can create new solutions, new ideas, and lasting change. Now, remember from our previous episodes, shame and judgment is like that 50-pound weight on the hood of your car. When you're stuck in shame and judgment about your eating, we can't even get under the hood to see what's making the dashboard lights come on in the first place. That binge, that out of control moment with food, all it is a light on your dashboard. It's telling us something is going on. But it's so important to learn how to respond differently to these moments so that we can access and get under the hood. We have to remove shame and judgment, and this calm process is exactly going to walk you through a way to do that. A binge or out of control moment with food is just a signal. It's information. It's your body and your brain's way of telling you something needs attention under the surface. It's the light on the dashboard. So the calm process helps you get into curiosity and compassion, which are the emotional states that you need to be in to actually decode what the signal is trying to tell you. So let's dive into the calm process. Now, in case you can't quite hear the word that I'm saying the word calm, like the opposite of frazzled, calm, C-A-L-M. And each letter of the calm process has its own step. So calm stands for comprehend with compassion, assess and address, learn the lesson, and move on. Each step builds on the previous one, and the entire process is designed to help you transform moments of struggle into opportunities for growth and self-understanding. So let's start with the C in the calm process. Comprehend with compassion. This is the first step. This means approaching what happened with curiosity instead of judgment. Now, the key question here is, how does this make sense? Notice I'm not asking, why did I do this? What's wrong with me? I'm asking, how does this make sense? This question assumes that your behavior was logical given the circumstances, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. Maybe it makes sense because you restricted food earlier in the day and your body was genuinely hungry. Maybe it makes sense because you've been under a lot of stress and food has become your primary coping mechanism. Maybe it makes sense because you've been trying to eat perfectly all week and your brain finally rebelled against the restriction. The goal here is to shift into curiosity and be compassionate with the part of yourself that needed to eat. This isn't about excusing or condoning the behavior. It's about understanding it so you can respond to the underlying need. So that's the C, comprehend with compassion. The A is assess and address. This is the second step. Here, you're getting curious about what you were trying to get the food to do for you and how you can honor those needs in a more sustainable way. So the key questions here. What was I trying to get the food to do for me? What were my needs in the moment? What are my needs now? And how can I take care of them? Maybe you were trying to get the food to help you relax after a stressful day. Maybe you were asking it to provide comfort when you felt lonely. Maybe you needed it to give you energy because you hadn't eaten enough earlier. Maybe you were trying to use it to celebrate or to numb difficult emotions or to feel a sense of control. Once you identify what you are asking the food to do, you can start thinking about how to honor that need in other ways. If you were seeking comfort, maybe what you need now is a warm bath, a call to a friend, some gentle movement. If you were trying to manage stress, maybe you need some deep breathing, some time in nature, or to address the stressor directly. This step is about connecting with yourself and your needs. You're building the relationship between you and your body, learning to understand what you actually need rather than just reacting to the surface level craving. Now we move on to L. L stands for learn the lesson. This is the third step. This is where you extract valuable information from the experience so that you can respond differently in the future. So the key questions here are, what do I learn from this? And if I had a do-over, what would I do differently next time? So this is where you might start to see connections to the 8 reasons that we discussed in the previous episodes. And maybe you learn that restriction earlier in the day led to overeating later. Maybe you discover your nervous system was dysregulated and you automatically turn to food for regulation. Maybe you realize you were disconnected from your body's signals and you ate past satisfaction because you couldn't tell when to stop. Here's something really powerful about this step. It is the do-over. I want you to visualize what you would do differently in the same situation. So picture yourself in that exact scenario again, but this time responding in a way that honors your needs without using food as the primary solution. So what's so important about this visualization is that your brain doesn't know the difference between the real thing and a visualization. When you mentally rehearse a different response, you are literally creating new neural pathways that make it more likely you will choose that response in the future. And what's so great is your brain, the most recent memory for your brain is the one of the do-over, not what actually happened. So maybe you visualize yourself taking some deep breaths before opening the pantry. Maybe you see yourself calling a friend when you feel lonely instead of immediately reaching for food. Maybe you see yourself giving yourself permission to eat, but just deciding, you know what, let me just take a few minutes and just go outside and connect with nature and just take a walk by myself. And then when I come back, if I still want to eat, I will. Maybe you picture yourself eating a more substantial lunch so you don't arrive home ravenous. These are all options for you. What would I do differently? Now, the fourth step and final step is M, move on. And this is where you ask yourself, what's next? And how quickly can I move on? So this step is about developing what I call your bounce back ability. It is proving to yourself you can have a difficult moment with food and still return to caring for yourself with kindness and intention. This is where you grow. This is where you create resilience. And here's something that might surprise you. Confidence is created here, not in doing things perfectly the first time. Confidence comes from knowing that even when things don't go as planned, you can respond to yourself with compassion and get back to taking care of yourself. Moving on does not mean pretending it didn't happen or minimizing what occurred. It does not mean sweeping it under the rug and not learning from it. It means integrating what you learned and returning to your values and your vision for how you want to show up with food and yourself. All right, so let's walk through what this might look like in practice. Let's kind of talk about a real world example. Let's say Sarah comes home from a particularly stressful day at work. She had planned to cook dinner, but instead she finds herself standing in the kitchen, eating crackers, and then cookies, and then leftover pasta, and then the ice cream. And she realizes that she has been eating for 30 minutes and feels completely out of control. Here's how Sarah might use the calm process. She's going to start with C, comprehend with compassion. Instead of immediately going into self-attack mode, Sarah asks herself, how does this make sense? She realizes she's been under enormous pressure at work this week. She barely ate lunch because of back-to-back meetings. She's been relying on food to help her transition from work stress to home relaxation for months. She speaks to herself like she would a good friend. Of course this makes sense. You've had an incredibly hard week. You're hungry and you haven't developed other ways to manage this transition yet. Now we move on to the A, assess and address. Sarah asks herself what she was trying to get the food to do for her. She realizes she was asking it to help her relax, to provide comfort after a difficult day, and to give her the energy she didn't get from a proper lunch. She identifies her current needs are for genuine nourishment, stress relief, and comfort. She decides to make herself a balanced meal since her body is asking for actual nutrition, and then she takes a hot shower to help with the stress relief. And then we move on to L, learn the lesson. Sarah reflects on what she can learn from this experience. She realizes that not eating enough during stressful workdays sets her up to overeat when she gets home. She also sees she needs better ways to transition from work stress to home relaxation. She visualizes herself setting a phone alarm to remind her to eat lunch tomorrow, and she pictures herself taking 5 minutes to sit in her car and do some deep breathing before walking into the house. Now we go to the M, move on. Sarah asks herself, what's next? Instead of spiraling into shame or making drastic promises about being perfect tomorrow, she focuses on how she can care for herself for the rest of the evening. She decides to go to bed a little earlier since she's tired, and she sets her intention to honor her lunch break the next day. Notice how different this response is from the typical shame spiral. Sarah gathered information, addressed her actual needs, planned for the future, and moved forward with self-compassion. This is how you can turn a difficult moment into an opportunity for growth. Without the calm process, Sarah might have kept eating and then probably promptly put herself on the couch, scrolling social media, watching TV, watching Netflix, and probably would have stayed up for a lot longer. She would not have given herself, her brain, any break at all, because we all know that social media and Netflix is not exactly relaxing or soothing to the brain. It's a very different picture, one path or the other. Now, I want you to be realistic about implementing this process. If you are in the middle of an intense shame spiral, let's say we're after a challenging moment with food, we've eaten a lot of food, we feel the shame, the blame, the attack, it might be challenging to access this framework right away. And that's okay. Sometimes the first step is just getting yourself out of the shame spiral by any means necessary. I want you to remember, shame and judgment are that 50-pound weight on the hood of the car. The calm process involves getting under the hood. We have to remove the shame and the judgment first. So if we need to take a little time to take some space to get past the shame and judgment, it might mean stepping away from food entirely and just going for a walk in nature. It might mean calling someone who loves you. It might mean watching funny cat videos or doing something that brings you joy and reminds you that you are a whole person beyond your relationship with food. So this does not mean scrolling, looking for answers, going into your typical spiral. It's getting away from it. And then you can come back and get under the hood. Now, here's what won't help. Searching online for how to stop binge eating when you're in shame mode. Driving around and eating more food while listening to binge eating podcasts. Beating yourself up, thinking you'll never figure this out, or giving up on yourself and your dream of becoming calm, connected, and confident with food. I have been in every single one of those scenarios more times than I care to admit. I know how seductive it can be to think that if you just find the right article or podcast episode or blog post that you will finally have the willpower to never binge again. But that's not how lasting change works. Lasting change happens when you learn to respond to these moments with curiosity instead of judgment. It happens when you start seeing binges as information instead of evidence that you're broken. It happens when you develop the skill of moving from shame to compassion. The calm process gives you a specific roadmap for doing this. It helps you move from survival brain into your learning and growth brain. It transforms moments of struggle into opportunities for self-discovery and growth. And here's something beautiful about this process. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes to access. Eventually, you might find yourself moving through these steps automatically when you have a difficult moment with food. You might even start using the framework before things escalate, when you first notice a signal on your dashboard. Remember, this process works for any time you show up with food in ways that you don't prefer. It doesn't have to be a full binge. Maybe you ate a little past satisfaction at dinner. Maybe you found yourself mindlessly snacking while watching TV. Maybe you ate something and immediately felt guilty about it. Maybe you found yourself trying to sneak some food behind somebody's back. The calm process can help you respond to any of these moments with curiosity and compassion. I want to leave you with this. Your worst moments with food don't define you. They are not evidence that you're broken or lacking willpower. They are signals that something needs attention underneath the surface. And when you learn to respond to these signals with the calm process, you transform them from sources of shame into catalysts for growth. So this week, I invite you to try the calm process the next time you have any kind of struggle with food. You don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to access deep compassion immediately. Just try asking yourself, how does this make sense? And see what happens. Remember, you are not trying to eliminate difficult moments with food entirely. You are learning to respond to them in a way that actually serves your growth and your well-being. You're developing the skills of self-compassion and curiosity that will serve you not just with food, but in every area of your life. Now, next week, we're going to explore the safety paradox, why it can feel so hard to stop binge eating, even when you understand all of the tools and the frameworks. And until then, be gentle with yourself. Every moment of curiosity is a victory. And every time you choose compassion over judgment, you are rewiring your brain for lasting change. Now, if you want a complete step-by-step guide for what to do after a binge, I have a free download for you that walks you through a detailed 5-step plan. You can find that at janepilger.com/after, like after a binge, after. With this download, you're going to get the calm process. You are going to get a worksheet that walks through every single question that I walked through here. So you will get that. And you also are going to get 5 specific steps that I didn't even cover in this podcast. So be sure to get your download today. janepilger.com/after. I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes. That's what I have for you today. I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Binge Breakthrough. If you would like personalized guidance, insight, and support to implement the tools, skills, and concepts you are learning on this podcast, I have just what you need. Cultivate an entirely new relationship with yourself and with food, alongside other women who know and understand your struggles. Coaching, connection, and change are waiting for you. Spots are limited, so sign up today. Find out more at janepilger.com/cultivate.